So, what was your first break? What was your first lucky moment that got you on the path you wanted to be on?
Well, I worked in a darkroom. I started working for John Cordy, who was a Bay Area filmmaker, had a big Victorian house in Mill Valley, and was making this animated cutout feature that George Lucas was funding and the Ladd Company was funding. This is in 1980. I was just out of high school, and I'd gone to a sort of summer school film program and found it, those who can't teach gym, and those who can't teach gym teach film. And those who can't teach film were teaching this summer program. And so I remember being kind of disillusioned. A friend of mine who had been through this program had gotten a job work for Cordy and was in the darkroom. And they were making translights, and I don't know if anybody knows what translights are. It's like a see-through kind of semi-translucent roll of photographic paper, but it's like vellum. And it's impregnated with they were black and white, but they were unbelievably expensive. Like, it was a 60-inch roll or something, and you roll it out, and it could, had to do it in the dark and cut it and put it up on the wall and project. And sometimes there were 3, 4, 5-minute exposures that you would have to dodge and burn. And I mean, it was really, it was big, technical, like photographic stuff. And I liked it, it was fun. I did a lot of that in high school, and I liked working on it. But it's, really stinky chemicals in the dark all day long. And if you can't make a mistake, because you're working with a print medium you roll out a 60-inch piece of the stuff and cut it off. It's 4 feet or 5 feet, and you make a 5-foot blow up. It's a couple $1,000s. So it's really meticulous stuff, and I enjoyed it when I first started. And I could see my friend Paul, he got me this job doing this because he desperately did not want to be doing it anymore. He was like, oh God, thank God, let me do anything other than this. Let me find somebody to come in and take over for me. And so I did that for about 6 months, 7 months, and then I moved into the animation department, mostly just moving boxes and being a PA. And that was really my first gig, where I was actually making, $3.75 an hour or something, working in the movie business.
But then what about beyond that? Didn't you worked on some ILM or something?
Yeah, I got a job. My roommate was a camera assistant in the mat department at ILM, and then they needed somebody to do stage stuff. And at the time, I was helping the visual effects department. It was run by a guy that I worked for in the darkroom, and he had this idea. There was a sequence in the movie where they had to kind of fly, where characters had to fly through live action traffic. And so I had this idea that I would take a Steadicam, and I was going to try to gyro stabilize it or something, and I could do this flying plate, and I could shoot this at like 3 or 4 or 5 frames a second. So I was trying to rent the equipment in San Francisco to test this. So I went looking for Steadicam, and I found that all the Steadicams had been rented and were up at ILM. And so I said, so I called my friend who worked in the mat department there, and I said, we find out when they're going to be done with it, because I want to rent it, because I have this idea to do this undercrank Steadicam stuff. He said, who told you about that? I said, what do you mean? He said, who told you about the undercrank Steadicam stuff? I said, no one, I just had an idea that I needed someone. He's like, I can't talk to you, man, I gotta call you back. So I get a call about an hour later, and it's Dennis Muren, and Dennis Muren goes, who told you about the undercrank Steadicam stuff? And I said, I don't know. So they were working on the speeder bikes for Return of the Jedi, and they were working on the thing at the same time. And so I kind of came up on their radar as this like pain in the ass in Mill Valley working on that weird hippie movie, but somebody was talking to him. And I put, I put my roommate in really bad position because everybody thought he was like divulging trade secrets. So they had an opening, and I got a call from, and Craig put me up for it. Said, you should talk to Dennis Muren about this, and you could come. And I was a meter jockey, just shooting green, blue screen chicken walkers. I shot chicken walkers, and I got to work with my heroes at the time. I got to work with Phil Tippett and Tom Sanamon and Joe Johnston, Dennis Muren, and
So, I mean, you were inhabiting this very techie world at
Yeah.
that point. Did you see a kinship when you read Social Network, his little group of...
No, not so much in that. I kind of, in my mind, they were sort of more like film nerds. You know what I mean? They were sort of more like the guy. When I first moved to LA, I sort of fell in with this crowd of guys who were all UCLA grads, UCLA Film School grads, who were making their own movies, and they had this house they called the Pad of Guys, or the Pad of Guys, and Shane Black and Fred Decker and Greg Pruss, and they were working on scripts, and it was that frat house kind of like, you go over there and Saturday night, and they would show 2 or 3 movies in a row, and everybody get blasted and bag on the movies, and everybody had their own it was the lowest kind of nerd form of the cahiers du cinema. It was like these, everybody had an opinion. They were all really, really strong opinions, and then fights would break out, and people would be like, St. Elmo's Fire is great, that kind of stuff.
When you moved to LA, did you have a specific ambition? Did you come down there to make a movie? Did you ever think you were going to make like a low-budget Roger Corman movie or something like that?
No. No, I came to LA hopefully to make movies, but to make television commercials. And I'd been working at ILM. I'd done this American Cancer Society commercial on the weekends and it had, did it for like $8,000, and it made been banned on 3 networks. And so all of a sudden I was like interesting to people, and I did a music video, and I came to LA to make music videos, and I did that for a while. But the whole idea, music videos for me was like, film school. It was like somebody was going to pay to play. They were going to pay me to play.